So, imagine for a second that you are standing right on the edge of a dry dock in this, like, massive shipyard.
Oh, wow. Yeah, just picture the scale of it.
Right. And you are looking up at the hull of a super yacht. I mean, it is just 100 meters of gleaming steel and aluminum.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and from where you're standing, it just looks like the absolute pinnacle of luxury. You know, you picture the champagne, the sunsets, the teak decks, the total silence of the ocean. It's basically a dream, right?
It's a dream product. But the reality of where you're actually standing, the shipyard itself, is a very, very different beast.
Totally.
If you look around that hull, you aren't seeing luxury. You are seeing a high-stakes, heavy industrial war zone.
Right. It's loud.
Extremely loud. It's dangerous. There are sparks flying everywhere. You've got cranes moving massive tonnage right overhead. It's basically an ecosystem of incredibly tight deadlines in engineering that has to be, well, literally perfect.
Because if it isn't perfect, you don't just get a bad Yelp review, you get an absolute catastrophe.
Exactly. And that is the tension we are really exploring today. We are taking a deep dive into the world of shipyards and superyachts. But we aren't here to talk about the thread count of the sheets or, the horsepower of the engines.
No, we're looking at something much deeper.
Right. We are looking at the invisible machinery that keeps these floating cities from becoming, well, floating disasters.
Yeah, and we're basing this deep dive on a really fascinating body of work by Maurizio Rizzari. He's this veteran in the industry. I mean, he's spent over 20 years actually living in shipyards, managing these massive projects.
He's seen it all.
He really has, the good, the bad, the ugly. And he starts with this premise that I think is going to genuinely surprise a lot of people.
It definitely surprised me when I first read it.
Right. He says that the difference between a flawless operation and a total disaster usually isn't about the quality of a weld.
Yeah.
It's not about the physical steel at all. It is about the unseen.
And that is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people in quote-unquote real industries.
Right.
We really like to think the product is the thing.
Right, the tangible stuff you can touch.
Exactly. But Rizzari argues that the real difference maker is the invisible process. It's the bureaucracy. It's the rules. It's all the stuff that most people try to ignore because they think it just, gets in the way of the real work.
Which is funny because bureaucracy is usually a dirty word.
Always.
It's the enemy of speed. But our mission for this deep dive is to completely flip that script. We are going to explore the art of making the invisible visible.
I love that phrasing.
Yeah, we're going to unpack how you can turn standard operating procedures, SOPs, and heavy regulations from an absolute nightmare into a strategic superpower.
It's really about moving from chaos to coherence. And I want to be clear right off the bat here. Even if you don't own a shipyard, and I'm assuming most of the people listening don't.
I certainly don't.
Right, me neither. But the principles here are totally universal. Whether you're running a software startup, a marketing firm, or even just managing a really busy household, the way you handle the invisible work completely determines whether you succeed or just burn out.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right into this concept of the unseen. Rizzari identifies this specific enemy of efficiency that exists in almost every single organization. He calls it operational memory.
Yes.
Now, to me, memory sounds like a really good thing. We want institutional memory, don't we? Why is this suddenly a problem?
Well, it sounds positive, sure. But think about how work actually gets done in most places. You have the official training manual.
Well, one that sits on a shelf and gathers dust.
Exactly. Nobody reads it after day one. And then you have the real way things happen. It's the tricks, the shortcuts, the really specific workaround that only Dave in accounting knows.
Right. It's the jiggle the key method.
Right.
Like, if you turn the key to the left, the lock jams. But if you pull it out a millimeter and turn it right, the door actually opens.
Yes, that is exactly it. That is operational memory. It is that layered body of knowledge, the whole how we do it here culture, that lives exclusively in people's heads.
It's tribal knowledge.
Exactly, tribal knowledge. And in a shipyard where you have thousands of moving parts and literal millions of dollars on the line, relying on tribal knowledge is terrifying.
Because of the bus factor, right.
Or the lottery factor, if we want to be a bit more optimistic about it.
Right. If Dave wins the lottery and quits.
Exactly. It works beautifully as long as the exact same crew is there, doing the exact same tasks they've done for 10 years. But what happens when the project scales up?
Or when you hire 10 new guys who don't know the key trick.
Right. Or what happens when a client suddenly demands something you've literally never done before?
The system just breaks because the system was basically just Dave.
Precisely. And Rizzari calls this the fragility of the system. He has this one quote that I think just cuts right to the bone. He says, "You can't improve what you've never defined."
That is so true.
If your process completely relies on the goodwill and the memory of individuals, you are essentially starting from scratch every single morning. You are just betting that everyone remembers what they did yesterday.
Which sounds incredibly stressful. I mean, it feels like you'd just be constantly fighting fires all day.
And that is exactly the distinction Rizzari makes. He contrasts two entirely different types of management cultures. On the one side, you have the reactive culture. These are what he calls the feeling managers.
Feeling managers, so they operate on gut instinct.
Exactly. When a problem explodes, they rush in to fix it.
And to be fair, that feels really good in the moment. It feels heroic, you know? Look at us, we saved the project, we pulled an all-nighter, and we fixed it.
Oh, it's a huge adrenaline rush. We love the firefighter hero archetypes in business, but in reality, and certainly in shipbuilding, that is a massive sign of failure.
Because it means something caught fire in the first place.
Right. It's exhausting, it's highly inefficient, and it wastes massive amounts of energy. Now, on the other side, you have professional management. These are the crews that prioritize prevention.
So they don't want to be the heroes.
Not at all. They want a boring day. They don't do reactive maintenance, they do scheduled maintenance. They want a Tuesday where absolutely nothing goes wrong because the system already handled the complexity.
So the real goal is to move from being a firefighter to being, well, an architect. You want to design a structure where the fires don't even have a chance to start.
Exactly. And the primary tool for building that fireproof structure is the SOP, the standard operating procedure.
Okay, I have to stop you there. Because when I hear SOP, my eyes just immediately glaze over.
I get it, trust me.
I just picture a 300-page binder written in total legalese that is basically only there to cover someone's backside. It feels like homework. Honestly, it feels like the exact opposite of creativity.
You are definitely not alone in feeling that way. That is the exact stigma Rizzari is fighting against, especially in the superyacht world, which really views itself as an artisan industry.
Oh, sure. Craftsman.
Right. People think, I'm a craftsman. Don't box me in with some corporate checklist. I need freedom.
Let me just work my magic.
Yes. But Rizzari reframes this entirely. He says, we need to stop looking at SOPs as rules to control people, and we need to start looking at them as shared knowledge.
Shared knowledge.
Think of it this way. An SOP is simply a mechanism to capture the absolute genius of your best worker and then democratize it so everyone else can do it that exact same way too.
Oh, wow. So it's not about restricting the worker at all. It's about giving every single worker the skills of your absolute best worker.
That's it. And Rizzari poses this golden question that every single organization really needs to ask itself. It's basically the ultimate litmus test for whether you need better SOPs.
What's the question?
He asks, how do we ensure that the quality of the next project is equal to, if not superior to, the best we've ever done?
Man, that is a really high bar. Usually we just cross our fingers and hope it's good enough. But he's talking about replicating your absolute peak performance every single time.
Exactly. If you did something amazing once, just because you got lucky, or because you had some superstar on the team who worked 80 hours that week, that's not a business strategy. That's just luck.
Right.
SOPs are how you actually turn that luck into reliability. They are the beating heart of scalability. You can't build a second shipyard or open a second branch of your business if the whole how-to is locked inside someone's brain.
That makes total sense. So if SOPs are the internal rules, the how we do it, we also need to talk about the external rules. Because looking through Rizzari's notes, the naval industry is just absolutely drowning in regulations.
Oh, it is an ocean of red tape.
You've got safety codes, environmental laws, classification societies, flag state rules. I mean, it seems endless.
It really is. And this brings us to the second major mental shift in this deep dive. Because just like with SOPs, most people view regulations purely as a burden.
Just obstacles in the way.
Right. They think, I could get this yacht built in 6 months if I didn't have to fill out these 1,000 safety forms.
I mean, we have all felt that at our jobs. Just let me do my work. Stop making me check all these pointless boxes.
Totally. But Rizzari introduces two concepts here that are really sophisticated, and they completely change how you view those boxes.
Yeah.
He talks about co-libertas and inevitable obsolescence.
Okay, those are some big words. Let's unpack co-libertas first. It sounds like something straight out of a philosophy textbook.
It does. It's Latin, and it essentially means freedom of the sky or heavenly liberty. But in this specific business context, the concept is all about finding freedom within constraints.
Freedom within constraints.
Yes. Rizzari argues that the cowboy approach, Ignoring regulations so you can move faster is a massive strategic error. It looks like freedom on the surface, but it's actually a trap.
How is it a trap, though? If you're moving fast, aren't you winning?
Because if you ignore the constraints, the safety rules, the environmental laws, you are just accruing risk. You might go faster today, but you are building up this huge debt of legal risks, sanctions, and potential accidents.
Ah, I see.
And eventually, you succumb to inevitable obsolescence. The market just moves on, the laws catch up to you, and you are left completely behind because you literally cannot legally operate anymore.
So the boring regulations are actually the very things that keep you in the game long term.
Exactly. And Rizzari uses a math metaphor here, which I find really, really helpful. He talks about the possibility space.
Okay.
He denotes it with the symbol P.
We always love a little math notation on the deep dive.
We do.
Yeah.
So think of regulations not as walls that stop you from moving, but as the perimeter of a map, or say the sidelines of a football field.
Okay, I really like that visual. So the regulations just draw the actual borders of the game.
Yes. Inside that perimeter, inside the possibility space, you can move with absolute total confidence. You know you are safe, you know you are compliant, you know you have credibility.
Because you know where the edges are.
Exactly. But if you step outside that space, you are navigating completely without a map. You might feel like you're making great time, but eventually...
You hit a shoal, or you just drive right off a cliff.
Exactly, you run aground.
So it changes the feeling of regulations from being these heavy chains to just being guardrails. They keep you on the road so you'd actually drive fast without crashing.
Correct. But here is the big problem in the real world. In most companies, you have your SOPs, your internal how-to in one binder. And then you have the regulations, the external must-do in a totally different binder.
And I'm guessing entirely different people manage them. Like the operations guy writes the SOPs, and then the compliance officer is the one who worries about the laws.
Exactly. They are completely siloed. And this is exactly where the friction comes from. You end up with all this duplication, weird gray areas, and what Rizzari calls ex post controls.
Ex post meaning checking your work after it's already done.
Right. Imagine a welder finishes this really complex job on a pipe system, and then a compliance officer walks in with a clipboard to see if he broke any laws.
Oh, no!
If he did, he has to rip the whole thing out and start over.
Yeah.
That is just incredibly wasteful.
It's like baking an entire cake and then checking if you use salt instead of sugar after it comes out of the oven. It's way too late.
That is a perfect analogy. So
Yeah.
Rizzari proposes a synthesis to fix this, and he calls it normalized compliance.
Yeah.
This is really the core of his whole philosophy.
Normalized compliance.
It means totally abandoning the idea of checking things afterward. Instead, you incorporate the regulations directly into the DNA of the procedures themselves.
So the rules literally bake right into the step.
Yes. You redesign the SOP so that if the worker simply follows the procedure, they are automatically compliant.
Wow.
They don't have to think about the regulations separately at all. They don't have to worry about the law. They just do the work, and the compliance just happens as a natural byproduct.
That sounds like an absolute dream scenario. Compliance stops being this massive panic event right before an inspection, and it just becomes business as usual.
It becomes completely invisible. And here I really want to touch on a physics concept that Rizzari brings up, because it really solidifies why this matters so much. He talks about entropic debt.
Oh, entropic debt, delta S debt, right. You know I love it when we get into physics.
I knew you'd like this part.
So entropy is basically chaos, right? Disorder.
In simple terms, yes. In thermodynamics, entropy is a measure of disorder. High entropy means high disorder. And in any system, high disorder means you lose energy to friction, heat, waste.
So a company without clear integrated processes is basically just a high entropy system.
Exactly. Think about that shipyard again. If there are no clear procedures, everyone is just running around asking questions, correcting errors, looking for tools, arguing about the best way to do things.
Just constant friction.
All that is friction. It burns up huge amounts of human energy, but it doesn't actually produce any value. That is your entropic debt.
That makes so much sense. You're spending, what, 50% of your energy just fighting the chaos of your own organization before you even touch the actual work.
Exactly. Rizzari argues that formalizing procedures, this whole normalized compliance thing, is about lowering that entropy. It channels the collective energy of the organization, he calls it the organization's beta, into a single unified direction.
The friction drops.
The friction drops, and the system becomes incredibly fluid.
So instead of fighting the current all day, you're streamlining the hull so you just glide right through the water.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
And when you do that, compliance stops being this heavy cost that you constantly have to minimize. It actually becomes a strategic advantage.
Because you're faster.
You become faster, safer, and way more transparent than your competitors, simply because you aren't wasting all that energy fighting your own lack of process.
Okay, I am completely sold on the theory. Low entropy, high energy, baked-in compliance. It sounds great. But let's get practical for a second. Because mapping every single maritime regulation to every single individual task in a shipyard sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare.
Oh, it is incredibly difficult,
Yeah.
which is exactly why you can't do it with paper diners. Rizzari realized this years ago and actually developed a specific tool for it called SYRAG.
SYRAG. Now, we need to be really clear here. Is this just a fancy name for a Google Drive folder where you dump all the PDFs?
No, not at all, and that is a critical distinction. Most companies think digitizing just means scanning a paper document and putting it on a server.
Right.
But that's still static data. It's
Yeah.
essentially dead. SORAG is a system designed to dynamically model SOPs. It tracks all these regulations contextually.
Contextually, what does that actually look like for the user on the ground?
It means the system actually understands who you are and what you are doing in that exact moment. So if you're a painter working on the hull, the system presents you with a specific procedure for that exact task.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the key part. It pulls in only the regulations that apply to that specific moment.
So I don't need to scroll through 300 pages of electrical codes or galley safety rules or engine maintenance logs just to find my paint rules.
Exactly. I just see the constraints for my paint and my scaffolding.
That is huge.
It filters out all the noise. It maps the regulatory constraints directly to the operating procedure you're looking at. It completely eliminates the gray areas where mistakes happen.
Because it's giving you the map right when you need it.
Yes. And crucially, it makes this know-how accessible to everyone, from the technical office way up high, all the way down to the bridge and the guys on the construction site.
That accessibility piece seems like a game changer because traditionally all those rules are just locked away in some management office. The guys on the ground, the ones actually building the boat, they never even see them.
Which is completely absurd, right?
Yeah.
How can you possibly expect someone to follow a rule they've never even seen?
You can't.
Rizzari points out that this transparency isn't just good for the workers either. It is hugely valuable for customers, for regulatory bodies, and for investors.
Because you can actually prove what you're doing.
Exactly. You can prove your operational coherence. You can show an investor, look, we aren't just hoping for the best here. We have a dynamic system that mathematically ensures we stay within the possibility space.
That definitely makes you a much safer bet than the cowboy outfit down the street who's just winging it.
It really does.
It really circles right back to our original mission statement for today. Making the invisible visible.
Yes, it transforms that highly fragile historical memory, all the stuff locked in Dave's head, into a tangible, living asset that actually drives value.
It completely changes the mindset from bureaucracy is just a chore to structure is freedom.
It's the ultimate paradox of high performance. We started this deep dive talking about super yachts, these massive ultimate symbols of freedom and leisure. But what we've really learned is that the only way to keep that dream afloat is through extreme, meticulous discipline.
You just can't improvise a skyscraper. And you definitely can't improvise a super yacht operation. To be truly free to create these amazing things, you need a rigid foundation of safety and process underneath it all.
Absolutely.
This has been such a cool look into a world I honestly didn't know much about before we started looking into these sources. We've gone from the scary bus factor, where knowledge is super fragile,
to rebranding those dusty SOPs as shared know-how. That actually democratizes genius.
Yes, and we looked at regulations not as these annoying walls, but as a possibility space, a map that basically keeps us off the shoals.
And then we combine them into normalized compliance, just baking those rules right into the work so we can finally stop stressing and actually start performing.
And finally, we saw how tools like SYRAG move all of this from just being a nice theory into a very practical reality down on the dock.
It is a really complete ecosystem of thought.
It is. So, as we wrap up today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. Rizzari talks all about making the invisible visible in a giant shipyard. But try applying that to your own life.
That is the real takeaway here, I think.
Definitely. How much of your success right now is currently relying on completely invisible habits that only you know? The mental checklists, the specific relationships you keep in your head, the weird way you organize your files that only make sense to you.
Think about it. If you had to hand your operations over to someone else tomorrow, whether that's your job, your department, or even just running your home, would they inherit a functioning system?
Or would they just inherit a mess?
Would they be navigating with a clear map, or would they just be guessing?
It is a pretty uncomfortable question, but honestly, defining what you actually do is the very first step to improving it. You really can't optimize a process you haven't even written down.
Absolutely. Excellence is not an accident. It is a system.
Perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
And to you listening, go out there and make the invisible visible. We will catch you on the next deep dive.